going to be a quick video on how big of a generator do you actually need. This is a 1000 watt generator. This is a 2000 watt generator. They're both a few years old now. This one's probably 10 or 15 years old, and I think this guy's probably in the range of 8 years old or so. And this is more for an emergency situation. I live in Canada. We get ice storms and stuff up here. I know people personally who have had their power out for 8 or 9 days from ice storms. That happened this last winter. And I think what happens a lot of the time is people will get stuck with, they'll get stuck without fuel. They'll have a big generator, maybe a 5,000 or 6,000 watt generator, and not realize that those generators quite literally will use 5 to 8 gallons, depending on the size of the generator, obviously, but they can use 5 to 8 gallons in an uninverted generator to run for 10 to 12 hours. Whereas one of these, I know this guy here, will run for, on a 750 watt load, you can get about 6.5 hours on a tank out of this. This one here on a 750 watt load, now it is a liter bigger tank, so it's not apples to apples, but this guy will run about 7.5 hours on a gallon, a little over a gallon, 5 liters, 4 liters for this one. And it just goes to show that you don't need to power your whole house. This guy here will run a fridge, it'll run a freezer, you can charge your phones and stuff on it. I know it's not an inverter, but it does put out relatively clean power to where I feel comfortable charging a phone from it. Don't take my word for it. Some people don't feel comfortable. I'm willing to take that risk. And it will, like I say, it'll power your fridge, your phone, those kinds of things. It'll keep you going in an emergency. This guy here should be able to power most furnaces. It'll power sump pumps. This one I've never tried a sump pump on, so I'm not 100% sure on if it'll power a sump pump. But this 2000 watt will power a furnace if you hook it up right. It'll power a fridge. It'll power your freezer. It'll charge all your phones. It's an inverter, so if you have sleep apnea or something, you can do your CPAPs and everything like that from it. And if you're not looking to power your entire home off a generator, this is the way to go. Something like this, I believe, is better than a big generator because it will power the essentials. Now, sure, you can't run everything all at the same time. You do have to be cognizant of what's going on at what time. It won't run a stove. That is a downside to this, but it will probably run an induction cooktop if you have one. So that's something to take note of. If you have an induction cooktop, you could still cook with this. Again, some of those 5,000 watt generators, they do have the 30 amp or 50 amp hookup, and you could power your kitchen stove with it. But in an emergency situation, you may have a propane barbecue, propane stoves, camping stoves, stuff like that to get you by. And that's why I prefer one of these, because you can probably get by a week of keeping your fridge cold, keeping your freezer cold, possibly keeping your furnace going on significantly less fuel than a bigger generator. Now, you're not going to have all the comforts. Like I say, you can't have all your lights in the house on. You can't have everything going all at the same time. But when I can store 10 gallons of fuel, I know I'm good for a few days versus having to store 5, 6, 7, 8 big gas cans to keep me going. Fuel might be sparse. If the power's out, they might not have fuel at the gas stations. And when fuel's short, I would much rather have a generator that's going to be more fuel efficient, that I don't have to worry about keeping it going because I know that I've got the extra storage or the extra fuel stored. Whereas, like I say, the big ones, they can run through 5, 6 gallons in a 10 or 12 hour period. So that's why me personally, I prefer these smaller generators. I do prefer these inverter ones over the open frame ones. They are significantly quieter, which I like. But this one here, I picked this one up used for $40. Now, it didn't run. I had to clean the carb and everything else. So I probably have 3 hours of time into it to get it going. But for $40, you just have to be on these things on Facebook Marketplace or whatever local classified website you use. If you stay on top of it and you're, in the evening, you see somebody post something 10, 15 minutes ago, you quickly message them, you can quite often get a decent deal. That's what I did for both of these. So like I say, I got this used for $40. I have about 3 hours into it to get it going. And then this one here, I got for $100. Now it needed carb clean as well. This one's a little trickier to get to the carb, so I probably have 5 or 6 hours into it. Now I cleaned the whole thing out. A lot of people could probably do it quicker, but I paid $100 for this. In an emergency, this is a cheap backup, And some of the bigger generators, you might spend $400 or $500 for them, and they're going to use more fuel. So that's why I do prefer these small ones. I think these, for most people in an emergency situation, are better than the big ones, because, like I said, again, I just want to emphasize the point: when you have the big generators, you have to have a lot more fuel with them. You hear stories of some guy's got a 5-gallon fuel tank, thinking he's good to go for a week in his generator. Well, he's got 5 gallons in the generator. That gets eaten up on the first day of running straight. And then he's got, then he uses up his tank on the second day. So 2 days in, he's out of gas. Well, one 5-tank thing, if I can get 6.5 hours out of this, I'm not going to run it constant. I'm going to keep the fridge cold. I'm going to keep the house warm if it's winter. And keep the freezer cold, and you may only have to run this for an hour every few hours just to keep that stuff going. Now, another downside of this, I guess, is you can't run a central AC. Some of the bigger generators, you can run the ACs for your house. I don't know how important that is to you. For me here, I'm willing to sacrifice on that if it's summer to not have the AC. I could just run a fan or something. Something else I do have is I have a trolling motor. I would use this to charge up my trolling motor battery, and I have a 1000 watt inverter to run that. So I can charge that trolling motor battery in a little over 3 hours if it's completely empty, and that'll power my fridge for probably 15 hours. So, 3 hours of runtime on this will keep my fridge going for 15 hours straight, which is pretty good if you're looking at saving fuel in an emergency. So yeah, that's just, my opinion on what size generator you need. I think these, I guess they call them suitcase style generators. I think they're the way to go for an emergency. I get people want full house backups. I would love one at some point, but it's not always practical for everybody. That's why I think kind of these 2,000, 2,500 watt generator sizes are fantastic. They even come with 3,000 watt inverter ones now that are come down a lot in price. Costco's got them. I see them, the AI power ones, they're pretty reasonably priced. So that's my opinion. Take that with what you will. And thanks for watching.